everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you the top 5 Microsoft Excel functions that you need to know in 2024. So if you're a business analyst, data analyst, or you just use Microsoft Excel to complete certain tasks based on your job role, these are important functions you should have in your toolkit. So let's get started. The first one is the XLOOKUP function. XLOOKUP function is a new lookup function. We have the basic lookup functions like VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index match, etc. So XLOOKUP is very dynamic and very flexible. So we are going to first of all perform a basic XLOOKUP here. So we have a product ID and a customer type that we want to return from this particular data set. So what we'll do is to type our function. I'll start by typing an equal to sign. Then I'm going to type the XLOOKUP function. After typing the XLOOKUP function, let me bring this here. So right here, the key to using certain functions is that you have to understand the syntax. So if you look at this XLOOKUP function instructions here, we have important arguments and we also have optional arguments. Important arguments are these ones that you see here: lookup value, lookup array. Any arguments that you see in square brackets are optional arguments. So if you don't include those arguments, your function is going to work as it should. So let's go on with our function. So the first argument here is our lookup value. So what is our lookup value? Our lookup value is the product ID. We want to use the product ID to return the customer type. So I'm going to put a comma. Then our lookup array, where do we want to find this product ID? We want to find it in the product ID column. So I'm going to select this range of cells. We want to find it in that product ID column. And another thing I need to emphasize is that if you have a certain range of cell like I do here, you need to make it an absolute reference. This is going to lock down your values and ensure that when you're performing calculations down your rows, no cell is going to shift. So I'm going to press my function key and press my F4 key to include this $sign. That $sign just makes that function, that range of cells, an absolute reference. So that is our lookup array. The third argument, which is also an important argument, is the return array. What do we want to return? We want to return the customer type. Okay, so we'll look for this customer type column here and also select what the customer type column. After selecting the customer type column, I'm also going to make it an absolute reference. After making it an absolute reference by adding the $sign, I can put a comma. So we are done with the important argument. You can decide to add the optional argument. You can decide not to add it. It will return the result as it should. But for me, I like to include the first optional argument if not found, because I just want to know if this particular thing I'm looking for is in the table or not. So I'm just going to type a text string not found in double quotes and then close the bracket. Once I close the bracket, I'll press enter. So once I press enter, you can see that the customer type for this product ID has been returned here. So if we come to this table and check for the product ID 294, you see that the customer type is home office. So I can come here and use my fill handle and then populate the entire range of cells. So we've been able to use XLOOKUP function to return the customer type. The second example I want to show us with our XLOOKUP is with multiple criteria. Let's say we want to return the product name and the order quantity with one single formula. It is very possible to do that. So I can actually type my XLOOKUP function and put my lookup value to be this. For my lookup array, I'm just going to select this and then make it an absolute function. So for my return array, since I want to return a product name and order quantity, I can just select the two columns because they are adjacent to each other. The two columns, I'm just going to select the two columns, and once I select the two columns, I can make it an absolute reference and then close my bracket and press enter. So with this, you can see that this single XLOOKUP function has returned our product name with order quantity. But what if you want to return product name and total? Remember, this total column is not adjacent, it's not beside the product name. In order for us to do that, we'll have to combine XLOOKUP function with another function to manipulate this data and get the necessary results that we want. So this is how you can do it. XLOOKUP with multiple criteria. So we'll type our XLOOKUP function. After typing our XLOOKUP function, our lookup value is the product ID, which I'm going to select. Then our lookup array is going to be our product ID column. So I'm going to select it and then make it an absolute reference. Then for our return array, this is where the logic comes in. We're going to use a choose function. So choose function is an Excel function that is going to return a value from a list based on an index number. Let me show you what that means in simple terms. So we're going to type our choose function. I'm going to type our choose function and select it. So you can see this is the syntax for our choose function. Let me bring it up here. So this is the syntax. The syntax is index number, the first value. So these two are important arguments. From the second value that you wish to add, those ones are optional, so you can either add it or not. So for this choose function, I'm going to use a curly braces. So curly braces just signifies that I want to return a list of values. That is, I want to return an array. So I'm going to type a curly braces. I'm going to type index number 1 and 2. So index number, you're the one to choose the index number that you need. Then I'm going to close that first index number. I'm going to close the index 1 and 2 with another curly braces. So that takes care of our first argument, which is the index number. I'm going to put a comma sign. Once I put a comma sign, we have to select the first value. So the first value that we want to return here is the product name. So where is the product name? The product name is in column D. So I'm going to select the entire product name column and also make it an absolute reference by adding the $sign. So still in the choose function, we are going to the third argument. Now the third argument is the total. Remember, I want to return product name and total. So we've included an argument for the product name. We need to also include the range for total under this choose function. So I'm going to select this total right here. I'm just going to select it and also include $signs to it and then close the bracket. So basically what this choose function here shows is we want to choose index 1 and index 2. So index 1 automatically stands for our product name now, and index 2 stands for our total column. Okay, so I can now put my comma sign. Remember, this choose function is what we are using to manipulate the return array for our XLOOKUP function. Okay, so after that, I'll decide to just add the optional argument not found in case this value is not seen in this table. So I'm going to close the bracket and then press enter. Once I press enter, you see that we've been able to manipulate this result to give us the answer that we need. So we now have product name and the total column. Because these columns are not adjacent, we had to use the choose function. If I come over here, I use the fill and I'll get the results for the other product ID. Okay, remember this is actually an array function, so it has been able to return this particular result to us. So this is how you can use XLOOKUP with multiple criteria for columns that are not adjacent to each other. The next function we're going to look at is the SUMIF function. SUMIF function is going to help you calculate values based on certain criteria. So we have a data here and we want to find the sales for each of these customer type. From this data, we have consumer customer type, home office, small business, and corporate. How do we find the sales of each individual customer type? We can use the SUMIF function to achieve that. To use our SUMIF function, I'm going to type an equal to and just type our SUMIF. Once I type the SUMIF, the first range here is the criteria range. What we mean the criteria range is the criteria that you're looking for. So our criteria here is the customer type. So I'm going to select this customer type column. I'm going to select the customer type column and also make it an absolute reference by adding the $sign. Then I'm going to put a comma. So our criteria is consumer for the first one. So I'm just going to select this cell F8, which contains this word consumer. After selecting this cell F8, that is the criteria. So we have an optional argument, which is the sum range. You can decide to select the sum range that you want. Okay, so our sum range now is the total, because this total is like our total sales. So I'm going to select this sum range and also make it an absolute reference. So after imputing the absolute reference, so basically this is how the SUMIF can be achieved. You first of all include your criteria range, then select your criteria and also include your sum range. After then, you just include your bracket and press enter. Once you press enter, this gives you the total sum of cells for customer type only. This is the total sum of cells for customer type only. So if I drag this down here, it is going to give me total sum of cells for each criteria. So if I click on any of this answer, it's going to show the cells that are included in this particular calculation. So we see that our sum range is the customer type column, and my criteria right now is F9, which is home office, and my sum range is actually the total sales column. So this is how you can find cells for each customer type using the SUMIF function. So I'm going to press enter. So under here, for another example, we want to find the order quantity for each product category. So we have different product category here. So for this product category, we don't want to add code or type manually the product categories that are available in this data set. We are going to use unique function to dynamically return it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to type our unique function. So unique function is going to extract unique set of values from that particular column for us. I'm going to type our unique function and then select this particular column because that is the product category column. Once I select the column, I'm going to close it in a bracket and press enter. So you can see that that unique function has returned the unique values for us. And if you look at this table closely, you see that we have three product category, which is office supplies, furniture, and technology. So that's a quick tip on how you can use unique function to extract unique set of values without duplicate. So let's use our SUMIF function again to get this order quantity. In order to do that, we'll just type our SUMIF function. So I'll type my SUMIF function. The range here right now is going to be product category because it is the product category that we want to find the order quantity for. We're going to select the product category. After selecting it, we are going to make it an absolute reference, and our criteria is going to be office supplies, the first one here, which is F19, and our sum range is going to be the order quantity. So this is why you should include your sum range if you have several columns that have different numerical values. So I'm going to select our order quantity as the sum range. I'm just going to select it, add the $sign, and then close the bracket and press enter. So this has given me the total order quantity for office supplies. If I drag this down here, it is also going to give me the total order quantity for furniture and total order quantity for technology. Another quick tip is that if you want to make your calculations faster and easier, always make sure to create tables for your range of data and also create name ranges. If you create name ranges, you just use the name range to reference each cell because name ranges automatically uses absolute reference. The third function here is if/ifs function. Okay, so if function is actually a logical function that you can use to check if a particular condition or if a criteria is being met. Okay, and if function has been around for a longer time, but I can tell you it is still very relevant if you're using Microsoft Excel for analysis. It is still very important that you should know how to use if function. So basically I'm going to show you how if function works first. So for our if function, say we want to create order priority, and we already have an order priority table that's been given to us. We have our order priority table and we have the criteria for this order priority. What do we do? After typing our if function, the first and important argument here is the logical test. So what is our logical test? Our logical test will be that if our order quantity here, which is D2, is actually greater than 40. So let's say if it's greater than 40, the value, if it is true, should be critical. So the second argument is value if this particular logical test is true. So with value is going to be critical. critical, I'm going to type the critical, but I'll include it in a double quote because it is a text string. So I'll include it in double quotes. Then the third argument is value if this is false. So the value I want to return if this logical test is false, I want to return low. So I'm just going to type low and enclose it in a double quote as well. Then close my bracket and press enter. Once I press enter, you can see that it has returned this. So let's say I drag this down to some point. You'll see that any of the other quantity that is greater than 40 is showing critical. Then the one that is less than 40, the less than or equal to 40 will now be low, because those are the criteria that we set for it. So in simple terms, this is how you can use your if function at a very basic level. But what if you have a other priority, as we have here in this table? We have like 4 different other priorities with 4 different criteria. So before now, if you have more than one logical test to perform on a particular function, you will use nested if function, but we have a new and flexible function to help us do that, which is the ifs function. So let me show you how the ifs function work. I'm quickly going to delete that off. We're going to type our ifs function. After typing our ifs function, my first logical test, let me come to my formula bar to type this. So the first argument is logical test. So my logical test is that if D2, which is the other quantity, is greater than or equal to 40, I'm using the criteria from this particular table here, is greater than or equal to 40. That means it should be a critical order. So I'm going to type critical, enclose it in double quotes. Then the second logical test that we need to do is if D2 is now greater than or equal to 30. If it's greater than or equal to 30, then that particular value, the value if that is true, should be high. So it should be a high order. So we are trying to group these orders now into different priority. I'm going to put a comma sign, and I have another logical test, which is the third one, the medium priority. So for the medium priority, I'm going to say if D2 is greater than or equal to 15, greater than or equal to 15, then the value if that is true should be medium. Value if that is true should be medium. Then I'm going to put a comma. After putting a comma sign, I'm going to go for the last order priority, which is low. The logical test is going to be if D2 is greater than or equal to 1. Sorry, there's a mistake here. I'm going to correct it. So if it's greater than or equal to 1, it should be low. So I'm going to enclose this low in a double quote and close with the bracket. So after including the bracket, I'm going to press enter. Once I press enter, I'm going to use the fill handle to populate this particular data. So you see that we've used the ifs function, very straightforward function, to get 4 different criteria for our order priority. So basically, if you look at these different criteria now, it takes care of both our minimum value and our maximum value. So the highest value that we have in this particular data set here is 49, and the least value that we have is 1. So low criteria takes care of greater than or equal to 1 up until 14. Then medium criteria takes care of greater than or equal to 15 up until 29. For high priority, the criteria is going to be greater than or equal to 30 up until 39. So any values that fall between 30 to 39 will be a high order. Then any value that falls between 40 and above is going to be a critical order. So that is how we can use our ifs function to set order priority. So the next function we are going to look at is the trim function. So we want to answer a question which says, how many corporate customers does the business have? So this business data, we have a column with the name, customer type, and we have different customer type. So let's use our count if functions, since the question is how many. So we're going to use our count if function to check how many. So the range is going to be our customer type. I'm going to select that range of cell, and then our criteria is going to be corporate because we are looking for how many corporate customers. I'm going to type corporate. I'm going to type corporate and close it in a double quote and close my bracket. Once I press enter, it gives me 5. So normally you would think that this is the correct answer, but looking at this data set, we can see that there are more than 5 corporate customers. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 6 here, and we have 7 here. But Excel sees these other 2 corporate values as a different value because there's a trailing white space after the text. So that is where the trim function comes in. And I'm going to quickly just insert another column here. Then we're going to use the trim function to clean this data. So in order for us to use trim function to clean this data, I'm going to type trim function. Once I type the trim function, I'll include this text and then close my bracket and press enter. So once I press enter, I can automatically use my fill handle to fill this particular trim function. So basically, this data now is clean. So another quick tip is that since I have used the trim function to clean this particular data, I automatically do not need this column A again. So if I decide to delete this column A now, you can see that we have a reference error in our trim function. So let me undo that. That reference error occurs because this particular function is referencing that column that we are deleting. So in order for you to get rid of that, we want to copy and paste these answers as values. That's going to get rid of the formulas that we use to clean this particular data. So I'm just going to select this and copy. Once I press copy, we are going to use the paste special. I'm going to right click and come over to this paste options. I'll select values. So once I select values, these answers here are now showing as values without the trim function. Then I can come here and then delete this particular cell. So once I delete this particular cell, you can see that we don't have that reference error anymore. This is because we've gotten rid of the formulas that we use to perform those particular calculations. After trimming your data, you can now answer the basic question of how many corporate customers by using your count if, and we're going to select this range. So this range that we're going to select, our criteria is going to be corporate. I'll type it in a double quote, close the bracket and then press enter. So this is the actual number of customers, corporate customers, that this particular business have. Okay, so that is how you can use the trim function to clean your text data. The next function here is the filter and sort function. So you already know that we have filter and sort features in Microsoft Excel, but we now have a function that can dynamically filter and sort your data for you. So we're going to look at basic filter with multiple criteria, and we are going to use the sort function as well. So the first basic filter that we're going to use, I'm going to type the filter function. And once I type the filter function, the first argument is the array. The array is just basically the table here that we want to select. So I'm going to select everything and make it an absolute reference. The second argument is include. So this include is basically what we want to filter this data by. So we want to filter our customer type. So I'm going to select this customer type. So I will also make it an absolute reference. And I want to say if our customer type is equal to small business. So I'm going to type the small business. You can decide to add the optional argument, or you just close your bracket and press enter. So once you press enter, you see that our customer type small business. Remember, that is the criteria we are filtering our data with. So small business has been returned, including with its product category, other quantity, and total. Remember, this is an array function. Array returns more than collection of items, that is more than one item. If we want to filter for multiple criteria, how do we do this? I'm going to type our filter function, and after typing filter function, the first array, which is this particular table, I'm just going to select it and make it an absolute reference. For this multiple criteria, we want to filter for small business with the product category office supplies. So that is going to be our second argument. Our second argument is include. So what do we want to include? I'm just going to open another bracket right inside of this function, and then I'm going to select the customer type. I'll just select it, make it an absolute reference, and say equal to. So I already have small business here, which is the customer type, and I also have the product category. So I'm going to reference this cell, I'm going to select it and then close this bracket. Once I close the bracket, I'll now use the multiplication sign. So that multiplication sign is just because we are trying to filter based on multiple criteria. So after the multiplication sign, I'll add another bracket and also select the data range for product category. So I'll come to this table and select this entire column. Also make it an absolute reference and then equal it to. So we are trying to say if this product category column is equal to office supplies. That's basically what this function is saying. And then I'm going to close the bracket. So this is just us trying to filter for multiple criteria. Then I'm going to put a comma. So once I put a comma, you see that the next argument that is highlighted is the optional argument. I can decide to type a text for the optional argument, not found. Then I'll close it in a bracket and press enter. Once I press enter, you see that I have been able to filter with multiple criteria. So let's say you want to filter with up to 2 or 3 criteria, you can use that similar method. So you can see the difference between this basic filter and the filter with multiple criteria. For the basic filter, we filtered for only customer type. So customer type return all the product category for that customer type, small business. But for this particular filter, we filtered with multiple criteria. So our criteria was customer type must be small business and product category must be office supplies. That is why it returned only values for small business and office supplies. So over now to our sort function. For our sort function, I'm going to, if we want to sort this data, by default it's going to sort in ascending order. So I'm going to type an equal to and type the sort function. So our array is going to be this entire table. I'm going to select the entire table. I can also make it an absolute reference and then I can close the bracket and press enter. Once I press enter, like I said, by default sort function is going to sort in ascending order. So if we want to sort in descending order, this is how to go about it. I'm going to type the sort function, and once I type the sort function, the first argument here is the array. So I'm going to select this table array. I'll select everything, make it an absolute function. So the second argument, which is an optional argument, is sort index. So it's basically asking which column do you want to sort this by. So remember we have 4 columns here, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So if I choose 1, it's going to sort by the customer type. If I choose column 2, it's going to sort by the product category. So I'm going to choose 1. I want it to sort by the customer type. Then the sort order is, once I select for the sort order, I'll select the descending, or you can just type -1. Then if you close the brackets here, you would see that this particular data has been sorted based on the customer type. So you see that small business comes first and the consumer will come last. So if you want to sort by the product category, here you can just come and edit this sort index argument. So let's say I change the sort index argument to 2 and press enter. So you can see that the data now is being sorted based on the product category. So these are the top 5 functions in Excel, and of course I've shown you how to use choose function, unique function, even count if functions to answer basic questions, because most times you always have to use these functions together. So if you have any other function that you use frequently in your roles, you can drop it in the comment section and we'll also learn from you. Thank you so much guys for watching this video.